We lost few. It's no problem. Okay. Can I request Sri Ramakrishna Das Prabhu, and there is also Mataji. Can't see the full name.
No, Prabhuji. Yeah.
Yes, maybe can you chant the verse, Prabhuji? Prabhu and Mataji, you can take turns to chant the verse, translation, and the purport.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Karmandriyani samyamya ya aste manasas smaran indriyartan vimuttatma mityacharaya cha ushyate.
So it's Karmendriyani Samyamya Ya Aste Manasa Smaran Indriyarthan Vimudhatma Mityacharaha Suchate. So as I told earlier, if you have some difficulty in chanting, you look at the word to word. So if you see the section, right, Prabhupada has broken that into different words. So you can see from here, Karma Indriyani Samyamya. So Karma and Indriyani, Karmendriyani is broken into Karma and Indriyani. Then Samyamya Ya Aste Manasa Smaran Indriya Arthan Vimudha Atma. Vimudha and Atma are two different words. Mityachara Sauchati. So if you know this broken structure, right, then it is very easy to chant the verse. That's a way to read the verse. And Prabhupada actually has given us everything here in this, how to chant the verses, how to memorize the verses by knowing the meanings, right?
Prabhuji, should
Then,
I read
yeah, one more time you can chant, yeah.
You want to read?
First.
No, sorry,
Yes,
Prabhuji. I
yes.
don't have my spectacles. That's why I can't read properly. It's okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, then
Karmendriyani samyamya ya aste manasa smaran indriyartan vimuttatma mityacharaya cha uchyate.
yes, Mother, that's good. So if you keep practicing like
Right?
that, it will
Indigo.
improve.
Ah.
Yeah.
Prabhuji, should I continue the synonyms?
Yeah. Please continue the translation and purport.
Okay. One who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects certainly dilutes himself and is called a pretender. There are many pretenders who refuse to work in Krishna consciousness but make a show of meditation while actually dwelling within the mind upon sense enjoyment. Such pretenders may also speak on dry philosophy in order to bluff sophisticated followers, but according to this verse, these are the greatest cheaters. For sense enjoyment, one can act in any capacity of the social order, but if one follows the rules and regulations of his particular status, he can make gradual progress in purifying his existence. But he who makes a show of being a yogi while actually searching for the sense gratification.
Suppose you're not speaking, kindly mute yourself. Yeah, okay, sorry, Mataji, continue.
Okay. But he who makes a show of being a yogi while actually searching for the objects of sense gratification must be called the greatest cheater, even though he sometimes speaks of philosophy. His knowledge has no value because the effects of such a sinful man's knowledge are taken away by the illusionary energy of the Lord. Such a pretender's mind is always impure, and therefore his show of yogic meditation has no value whatsoever.
Thank you, Mataji. Yeah, so Krishna is here telling Arjuna the danger of artificial renunciation or untimely renunciation. That you're not really prepared, you're not really purified, and that creates not only havoc in your life, but havoc in others' life also, more importantly. Others' life, those near and dear ones, plus society, it has an immense effect on society. Like when Bhaktivinoda Thakur was there, during his time, we hear his pastime, that there was this Pashandi, Pakhandi or Pashandi, who was actually a false, he was claiming himself to be an incarnation of God. And then on the name of that, he was doing all kinds of illicit activities in the ashram. And when Bhaktivinoda Thakur came to hear about it, then the British government gave him a task to actually, because they knew that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is a great spiritualist, very pure person. So he will definitely have the potency to, to bring him to order. So by the mercy of the Lord, then Bhaktivinoda Thakur went, and then he really took Bhagavatam with him. He didn't take anything else. He only took Bhagavatam and the holy name with him to counteract such infidels, right? Such people. So with the power of the holy name and Bhagavatam, actually that person was, that protected not only him, but also the rest of the society was protected by such pretenders. So that is why Prabhupada writes here, is knowledge has no value because the effects of such a sinful man, knowledge is taken away by illusory energy. We may think that actually we are preaching philosophy. So as devotees, as practicing devotees, we have to be extremely careful about this point. Because outside materialists, okay, they are not in the spiritual path, but we are somehow the other trying to become spiritual, trying to purify our life. But so we should never be under any illusion that we are higher than anybody outside, right? We are better than them. So we should not act on that platform that I'm superior. That is a great danger. And the moment we think like that, actually we are under control of illusory energy or the external energy of the Lord, Maya. And that becomes more dangerous. It's more dangerous to our spiritual life, and we eventually fall down. Right? So we should never be under the delusion. Rather, we should be very compassionate to those who are not on this path, because we know where where we were before and how we are trying to come to this part, right? So we are crossing over to this side. So we should be really compassionate and very helpful and friendly to those who are other side. Of course, not everybody will take the instruction. So as Prabhupada said that one of the offenses is to not to preach to those who are faithless, right? So we should exercise our our restraint and our own discriminatory skills to really preach to those who are outside. And then if you know that such persons, some people will never come this side, so we just leave them, right, and pray for them. That's all we can do. But we should never exercise our any kind of we should not harbor any thoughts that we are superior to them. Ultimately, the material world, everybody is suffering and everybody is going through difficulties. Somehow or the other, we are fortunate that, as Prabhupada said, we have joined the hospital for treatment. Those who are outside have not yet joined the hospital. So we are still patients, but somehow or the other, we're getting the right treatment. So we should never be under that illusion. Such a illusion is very dangerous, because we don't even know that we are an illusion. We think that we are actually whatever we are doing is correct. So this kind of artificial upliftment of ourselves, thinking that we are better, is what essentially Prabhupada is coming to. Although externally Krishna is telling that don't artificially renounce, but internal meaning of that is, on the spiritual path we have to be extremely careful, because on the spiritual path there will be more severe tests for us. Krishna often tests us to make sure that whether our resolve is pakka or not, whether we really have the resolve or the faith to really follow this path. So many times we have this testing situations, but then we simply hold on to our parampara, Guru Parampara, our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, and follow the process, whatever Prabhupada has given, that will always protect us. So it's far better to remain in our situation again, sthane sthitaha. That is the ultimate thread for this whole discussion, that be situated in your ashrama or whatever you're doing, and just add Krishna's names, add Krishna's pastimes, and that's how you purify our consciousness, right? Not only are we able to do our material work properly, but eventually our consciousness is also elevated, and then eventually we are on the path of going back to Krishna. So this verse that way is extremely important. So any questions or comments from anyone?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
Prabhuji, just thinking about this mithyakara. So in this world, right? Yeah, this is very relevant. So what are the qualities we can look for the mithyakara person?
Okay. It's mityachara. It's not
Mithyakara,
achara. See, because achara word you know very well, right? Achar is how you conduct yourself. So mithya achara means false conduct, effectively. So we have something in our mind, we were trying to, but we're outside, we're showing something else. So like a duplicity. So it's very easy. I remember Prabhupada telling us in some purports, and even our spiritual, my Guru Maharaj used to say that those who are pretenders cannot maintain that thing for long. You can maintain it. A show can go on for some time, but the show cannot be permanently put up, right? So at some point of time or the other, it will come out, right? Those who are pretending, eventually it will show up, because you should remember that Krishna is in everyone's heart, right? Krishna is in the heart of the pretender also, and Krishna is heart of those who may be having faith on this pretender. So Krishna is a common point for both personalities. So eventually, a sincere person who is seeking after the truth will eventually see the truth by Krishna's mercy, and that person will be exposed. And that's exactly what happened in the case of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and that false pretender, right? So does that help, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. So what I understand that we should leave it on time. It will come
Yeah.
automatically.
But at the same time, we should also develop we should not blindly follow somebody, right? We should have the discriminatory power. And that is why we have the scriptures. The scriptures tell exactly the symptoms of those who are pure devotees and those who are pretenders. So we should be able to also analyze, use our intelligence to analyze, not necessarily passing a judgment on anyone, but for our own betterment or better spiritual future and for those of others, right? We should have exercise that discrimination to also see how that person is behaving. That's why Krishna consciousness is all about behavior. It's all about behavior. We may sit and talk about philosophy a whole day, but ultimately, if you're not able to translate that into a day-to-day life, right, there's no point. So eventually, from actions, we should be able to prove that person's behavior. From person's actions, we should be able to understand the level of consciousness of that person. And that we can clearly see from the examples in front of us in the Shastras. And of course, we have the Society of Devotees. If you have always any doubt, then always we can refer to a senior Vaishnava and ask, Prabhuji, Mataji, I say this, that, is it right or not, right? So all of this is there in our society. We can always check. There are checks and balances in our society to make sure that such pretensions are always brought to light.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I have one question.
Yes, Mataji.
Prabhuji, for this read in the Prabhupada says, for sense enjoyment, one can act in any capacity of the social order, but one follows the rules and regulations of his particular status, he can make gradual progress in purifying his existence. How to interpret this correctly, Prabhuji? Is it saying that,
Yeah, go on, Mataji. You can finish your question, the question.
yeah, is it trying to, is it about our current position in this material world, and while we are trying to do any activities in Krishna consciousness, or it is talking about something else, Prabhuji?
Yeah, good question, Mataji. Good observation. So here, what Prabhupada is trying to say is, we are all living this material world, and we are in our respective varna and ashrama. The purpose of varna and ashrama is to actually elevate a consciousness so that ultimately we come to the spiritual platform. That is the whole idea of organizing the whole society into varna and ashrama, because varna ashrama means that depending on your natural proclivities or inclinations, like for example, if you are very good at administration, then you are considered having kshatriya qualities. Or if you're just like a very sadhu person, doing some kind of studies of scriptures and all that, then you have brahmanical qualities. Some people have tendency to do some kind of trading or business, right? So they will be engaged in that profession. Others who are just doing work, right, like normal work. So depending on one's proclivities, one is organized into any of these social orders. So the purpose of doing that is not to have unrestricted sense enjoyment. Not that whatever position I am in, that I can see now how to maximize my sense enjoyment. That is not the purpose of varnashrama. The purpose of varnashrama is this: if one has to follow the rules and regulations that are prescribed for each varna and ashrama. So Krishna will later talk about the qualities of a Brahmana, a Vaishnava, a Brahmana, a Kshatriya, Shudra, and all that. So we should always understand that these qualities are the ones that make a person's character, right? And then ultimately that reflects in the behavior. So the idea is, so if there is no rules and regulation, Mataji, then the sense enjoyment becomes unrestricted. So even though we belong to a social order, but the purpose of that position or the order is lost if we are not following the rules and regulations. So, but if we follow the rules and regulations, even though we may be doing regulated enjoyment, because we are following rules and regulations, so it's not unrestricted. Restricted enjoyment, even then you can make gradual progress in purifying existence. Why? Because you are following rules and regulations that are given to us by Krishna. That is the connection between performing a duty and purification. Does that help, Madhi?
Yes, Prabhuji, very much. Thank you, Prabhuji. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, if there are no other comments, we can go to the next verse. Sandeep Prabhu, you're there?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, bro, you want to chant the verse?
Yeah, sure. Yastva indriyani manasa नियम्य रभते अर्जुन कर्मेन्द्रिय कर्म योगम अशक्तः स विशिष्यते.
Yeah.
Should I go to the translation, Prabhu?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. Purport: instead of becoming a pseudo transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment, it is far better to remain in one's own business and execute the purpose of life, which is to get free from material bondage and enter into the kingdom of God. The prime Swartha Gati, or goal of self interest, is to reach Vishnu. The whole institution of Varna and Ashrama is designed to help us reach this goal of life. A householder can also reach this destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. For self-realization, one can live a controlled life as prescribed in the Shastras and continue carrying out his business without attachment, and in that way make progress. A sincere person who follows this method is far better situated than the false pretender who adopts show bottle spiritualism to cheat the innocent public. A sincere sweeper in the street is far better than the charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of making a living. Thank you,
Thank
Praveen.
you, Prabhu. So this is a very powerful verse, and the purport by Srila Prabhupada is very nice. So here, Prabhupada is now Krishna is telling that instead of becoming so on the other hand, which means he's comparing to the previous person who is a mithyachara, who's a false pretender. So instead of becoming a false pretender, is far better that a sincere person, that means a person who is sincerely doing his job and in a regulated fashion, which means you are following the rules and regulations of that particular social position or social order. And then at the same time, you also try to engage in some kind of devotional service or Krishna consciousness. It could be very, very basic. Like, for example, somebody who's coming very new to the temple, he's spending time for Krishna. That is also karma yoga, that is also devotional service. He may not have started chanting or he may not be offering food to Krishna and having at home or prasadam, right? Basic thing is just spending using his time to come to Krishna because that time could have been used for some sense enjoyment, but he's sacrificing that and coming to the temple. So that is what Krishna sees, that whether you are sincerely trying to do something to engage in devotional service, it could be very, very basic as I just explained, or it could be for some person it could be like he's starting to chant, so which means he's spending his useful time, taking time from his useful schedule, from his whole schedule, and spending some time for Krishna. Maybe it means maybe just one round, but that's fine, 10 minutes or whatever. But still, that 10 minutes of his day is utilizing for Krishna. And rest of the time he's doing his duties. But that 10 minutes of time that he's utilizing actually starts to purify his consciousness by unlimited amount, actually. It's not proportional exactly, spiritual life. That means you give 10 minutes means only you'll get 10 minutes of purification. No, that 10 minutes will give you 100 times more purification, because actually our life is has been so sinful because we have lived so many immemorial lives we have taken in this material world, that there is a storehouse of sinful tendencies and ideas and desires in our mind. So the clearing takes time, right? But immediately when you start the process, you can feel, most of you have or must have experienced it, that when you start, you already feel that. But the total clearing will take significant amount of time depending upon how sincerely you are practicing. But again, it's a gradual process, right? That's why Prabhupada uses the word gradual in the purport also. That gradually that progress happens and the purification starts. But Krishna only looks at whatever sincere endeavor. It must be sincere endeavor. It is not the quantity, but the quality of endeavor. Whatever we are able to do in service of Krishna, that is considered by Krishna as a positive aspect. And then he's the one who's actually clearing our consciousness. Why? Because he is already situated in our heart. So nobody else can clean us better than Krishna. He's already situated. He knows exactly the condition of our heart and mind and everything. So he is the one who's actually later on in the Bhagavatam, you'll see that verse very famous. Shranvata Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridi Antastohi Abhadrani Vidhu Noti Surutsatam. That Krishna says that those who have developed a taste for hearing my pastimes, I am situated in the heart and I clear away all the material contamination in the heart. Abhadrani Vidhunoti, which means completely, almost completely he removes. But again, because we are all individual souls, we have our own desires. So being in the material world, we cannot be completely pure, right? We are not like pure devotees who have descended from the spiritual world. We are all conditioned souls who have taken so many births. So naturally, the purification takes time. But whatever it is, this process is the best way to purify our consciousness. And Krishna personally helps us to clear our consciousness gradually. That's why in that invocation prayer, when you say like Nityam Bhagavata Seva, almost completely destroyed. All the contaminations are almost completely destroyed. So there is some amount of will still remains, which requires our endeavor. If everything Krishna cleans away, then without our endeavor, then we will take it so lightly. So there is an endeavor on our part also needed, and Krishna's mercy is also there. So this is a far superior process, as Krishna tells here. And the important thing to understand here is begin karma yoga without attachment. So that is very important. But again, this is not something that you switch from day one to, day zero to day one, right? It's again a gradual process because we have been living this material world for so many ages that naturally even though externally we may not know, but in the mind, all these desires are there and they will manifest as and when some material situations come in front of us. Those desires will manifest. Sometimes we think that, oh, I never thought about this, but suddenly that desire develops. It is because it is there in the mind. And suddenly when you see that material object or sense object, that desire manifests. So cannot be stopped, right? The desires are always there. But somehow or the other, if we sincerely try and pray hard to Krishna that, please, Krishna, let me develop some taste for your holy name. Let me develop some taste for your pastimes. Let me develop taste for devotional service. That is the process which takes us away from material attachments. Again, no artificial attempts to control or reduce attachment. It naturally becomes an outcome byproduct of our sincere devotional service. If you perform sincere devotional service, that detachment automatically is a byproduct. Jnana and Vairagya are natural byproducts of bhakti. Right? In Bhagavatam, that famous slok is there, right? Jnana Vairagya Uktena. So Jnana and Vairagya automatically comes as a byproduct of sincere devotional service. No separate endeavor is needed because Krishna is the one who's acting from within to clear our consciousness. So this point is very important that we slowly start developing some kind of attachment to Krishna so that our material attachments automatically reduce. Does anybody remember the verse from second chapter? Very famous verse which talks about developing a higher taste. If you develop the higher taste, the lower taste can be automatically given up. Does anybody remember?
It's param drishtva nivartate.
Yes, that's the verse. Do you remember the whole verse, Mataji?
That one I don't remember, Prabhuji. 1 second, I'm just recalling. Param.
I also don't remember now.
I don't. Yeah, 1 second.
Yeah, Param Dushva Nimarta. That's a verse. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
We can look at it later.
It's
So
here.
that is
It's here. I just checked it. 2.59 Vishya
Correct.
Vinivartante Niraharasya Dehina Rasavarjam Rasopyasya Param Drishtva Nivartate.
Exactly. So there, Krishna explains that Param Drishtva Nivartate means one who attains the higher taste. So even though the sense desires are there, even though the desire to enjoy the senses is there, but by actively engaging the senses in a higher engagement, in a better engagement, you develop the higher taste, then automatically the lower taste will go away. Many times Prabhupada gives example of prasadam. Now, we all have used to offering and honoring Krishna prasadam. Now, we cannot think of eating food as far as possible, right? As far as possible, not to eat food that is not offered, right? Even though it could be a very simple prasadam like khichdi, or it could be rice and curd. South Indians, we have curd rice or khichdi. It could be very simple. It doesn't have to be lavish. So rather than going and having some lavish food outside in a restaurant, we are very satisfied and peaceful and very happy that we offered something to Krishna and we are getting his remnants. That is a higher taste, practically speaking, right? Like this, we can have in all other aspects of life, right? Whether we are hearing about Krishna. So when we hear about Krishna or we read Bhagavatam, then we naturally lose taste for all other kinds of literatures. There's not so much attachment or the attachment gradually keeps coming. Now, some people are very attached to reading books. For them, it may take some more time. But the more time they spend reading about Krishna or hearing about Krishna, that's why Prabhupada wrote the book Krishna book. It's the best story book that we can think of. Like 90 chapters from Bhagavatam, all concentrated in that Krishna book, right? All the pastimes of Krishna, whatever he did in Vrindavan as he grew up, as in later pastimes in Mathura, Dwaraka, everything is there, nicely presented in a story format. So if you read this kind of pastimes, Prabhupada writes that naturally will develop a detachment from all other material topics. They will not interest you because our consciousness is clearing. So all the tons and tons of material desires that are there, they are slowly, the garbage is being cleared. So when the garbage is being cleared, our consciousness becomes clear. Right? As the garbage goes, it becomes clearer and clearer. The more it becomes clearer, we are able to visualize the reality and we are able to distinguish it from the illusory things. So we can see reality from illusion. Right? So that is the process. Any questions or comments here on this verse? This statement is very nice, Prabhupada. And sincere sweeper in the street is better than the charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of sincere. So the sincere word is very important. Whatever you're doing, if you're sincere in that particular occupation, sincerity here means not only to the duty, but sincerity to Krishna also. That's the message we should take. Not only we should be doing simply our duty sincerely, but sincere to our eternal Father Krishna or our spiritual master. We should be sincere in that respect also. So that is the perfect formula for us. Whatever you do, do sincerely. Our material duties as well as our spiritual responsibilities. Any comments here? Otherwise, I have one question for anybody can answer. This Swartha Gati, which Prabhupada is talking about. Do you remember any verse from Bhagavatam which talks about Swartha Gati? Actually, this exactly what is written here was spoken by a devotee in Bhagavatam. Does anybody remember? Or heard of? So it was Prahlad Maharaj actually who speaks in the 7th canto. He says, Nathe vidu swartha gatim hi Vishnu, durashaya hai bahirarthamanina. You must have heard this verse, very famous verse of Prahlad Maharaj. He says in that verse, I think it's 7.5, somewhere in the 7th canto, 731, 7.531. So there he says, Prahlad Maharaj says that people generally, the conditioned people, conditioned souls, they don't know their actual self-interest, which is Vishnu. Nate vidu swartha gatim hi Vishnu. Swartha gati means self-interest. Actually, all of our self-interest is to reach Vishnu. But we have forgotten it. Why we have forgotten? Because we have been immemorial lives we have taken in the material world and we have lost connection with Krishna. So this whole process of devotion service to re-establish that connection with Krishna and to understand our Swartha Gati. And that is exactly what Prabhupada is telling here, that in order to attain the Swartha Gati, you be situated in your ashrama or varna, sthane sthitaha, and thus engage in devotional service to the best of your ability. Then slowly we will start seeing our self-interest, which is to reach Krishna. Okay. Any thoughts or any comments from anyone? Or we can go to the next verse. Okay. Sakhi Rasa Dasi, the Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. You can read the verse translation.
Okay. Nityam kuru karma tvam.
It's Niyatam, sorry, Niyatam.
Sorry. Niyatam kuru karma tvam. Karma jayayo hi akarmana. Sharirayatra apicha. Sharirayatra apicha. Na prasidhyate akarmana.
Okay, it's Niyatam Kuru Karmatvam. Karma, it's not Jayo, it's Jayo. Ja is half. Jayo hi akarmana. Sharira yatra pichate na prasiddhet akarmana. So Yeah, you can go on read the translation, Mataji.
So synonyms, nityam, prescribed.
Niyatam, it's not nityam.
Sorry.
So
Niyatam.
it's niyat karma means your prescribed duties. Niyatam.
Yes, Prabhuji. Niyatam, prescribed, kuru, do, karma, duties, tvam, you, karma, work, jayayu,
Jaya.
jayayu. Better, he, certainly, akarmana, than no work, sharira, bodily, yatra, maintenance, api, even, cha, also, te, your, na, never, prasidyat, is affected, akarmana, without work.
Yeah.
Translation by Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. There are many pseudo meditators who misrepresent themselves as belonging to higher parentage, and great professional men who falsely pose that they have sacrificed everything for the sake of advancement in spiritual life. Lord Krishna did not want Arjuna to become a pretender. Rather, the Lord desired that Arjuna perform his prescribed duties as set forth for Kshatriyas. Arjuna was a householder and a military general, and therefore it was better for him to remain as such and perform his religious duties as prescribed for the householder Kshatriya. Such activities gradually cleanse the heart of a mundane man and free him from the material contamination. So-called renunciation for the purpose of maintenance is never approved by the Lord, nor by any religious scripture. After all, one has to maintain one's body and soul together by some work. Work should not be given up capriciously, without purification of materialistic propensities. Anyone who is in the material world is certainly possessed of the impure propensity for lording it over material nature, or, in other words, for sense gratification. Such polluted propensities have to be cleared. Without doing so, through prescribed duties, one should never attempt to become so-called transcendentalist, renouncing work and living at the cost of others.
Thank you, Mataji. So Krishna here is kind of concluding his points, right? So from the Mityachara, the 6th verse, and the 7th verse, where he requests Arjuna to start working without attachment and do your duties without attachment at the same time, do some kind of devotional service, start engaging in devotional service. So Krishna is kind of summarizing that here, that perform your prescribed duty. So he's concluding that perform your prescribed duty, but doing so is better than not working. So he has already explained that without purification, don't stop working, right? Just continue working, but try to change your consciousness or purify your consciousness by performing your prescribed duties in line with the religious prescriptions for that particular ashram or varna. Then he says that one cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. So this we have seen already, right? That it's not possible to remain without work. And then some people say that without working, there won't be any reactions. But then the reactions will manifest because the mind is always active. So the idle mind becomes a devil's workshop. In the purport also, Prabhupada explains very clearly again the distinction between those who are trying to artificially repress themselves or control themselves, pseudo meditators, as Prabhupada writes here, versus a sincere householder or whichever ashrama he's in, he just engages in his duty, either varna or ashrama. So Arjuna was a Kshatriya, Arjuna also was a householder. So his varna was Kshatriya, his ashrama was a householder. So he was prescribed, his prescribed duty was to fight, at the same time also maintain the family. Right? So Krishna never told him to give up any of these activities. He never asked him not to fight, never asked him to give up family life. So both were there, but then how do you change the quality of your life? How do you improve your consciousness? That is what is the essence. So that is what ultimately freed him from the material contamination. So naturally, then Prabhupada again talks about the same point that artificial renunciation is not the order of the day, right? Work should not be given up capriciously, which means whimsically. Capriciously means whimsically. That means suddenly one day decide, oh, I stop working. I don't want to do anything. No. It should come as a natural byproduct. Anything should naturally flow in our life, right? If you want to retire from a life, naturally it means that if you're a householder, you have to carry out your responsibilities till they are finished. In everybody, all members of our society, we have so many elderly devotees, elderly Vaishnavas, who went through all the ashramas. Even there are sannyasis who went through the householder ashrama They followed all the four ashramas like brahmachari, grahastha, vanaprastha. Then they took sannyas. So they setting good examples for us. Prabhupada himself is a best example, right? He went through all the ashrams. He never capriciously gave up anything. Although from day one he was a pure devotee and he knew his and actually Prabhupada got the instruction from his spiritual master in 1922 when he met him in Calcutta. That is the same day he got the instruction that you start preaching. But Prabhupada did not give up everything, and then just say, okay, let me just give up everything and take sannyas and start preaching. No, and join the ashram. No, actually, many of Bhakti Thakur's disciples did that, but eventually, they couldn't achieve anything, right? As much as Prabhupada, they couldn't achieve anything at all because they capriciously gave up work. Because although their intention was to do something good, but because they were not prepared, their consciousness and their mentality was not prepared. Ultimately, they failed in that mission. But Prabhupada actually meditated on the instruction of his spiritual master, but he knew exactly that he had to prepare himself, right, to execute the task. The task was given, but he was not mentally prepared at that point of time because he was still young. He had a young family. He was doing his business, and the children had to be brought up, right? So Prabhupada did not give up anything capriciously. He waited for the right time. But at the same time, he always remembered, he meditated on the instruction of the spiritual master. That is the most important thing. He always kept that instruction close to his heart because that was a mission that he had to fulfill. But he was preparing himself all along. That's why Krishna allowed him to really carry out his duties. And that is the purification that we have to bring in our life. We all also have a mission in our life that ultimately we want to become good devotees of Krishna. And then set good example for our family members, our children, youngsters, and others in the society who are coming new to spiritual life, right? Each of us have a responsibility. Each of us is a leader in our own rights because we are leading either the family members or people who are new to the society. We want to bring new people into the society. So we have to become the right example, right? Later in this chapter, Krishna will say that one has to set the perfect example, right? So because others can follow, others will follow. So Prabhupada then prepared himself nicely. He carried out all his responsibilities. And when the right time came, he thought of giving it up because the situation was created by Krishna in such a way that he had no choice but to leave the ashram. And then that was a preparation. It was not whimsical or capricious, right? So that is an example we should take from such great devotees, that how they lived their life, never forgetting their mission, but preparing themselves to come to the right time and stage, time, place, and circumstance to actually execute that instruction. And Prabhupada's example is the best. And there are many other devotees, sannyasis in our movement also, who went through all the ashrams and set good example for us. Nobody gave it up capriciously. Of course, there are many devotees who joined as brahmacharis and immediately took sannyas. That's a different thing, right? You didn't enter the grahastha ashrama. That is fine. Once you enter, then you better follow, right? If you don't enter, that is fine. Then you can continue as Naishtika brahmachari. But once you have entered the ashram, never capriciously give up your responsibilities. So that is the instruction that Krishna is telling, and Prabhupada is emphasizing again and again in the purports. Right? So any thoughts here? Or any questions from anyone? So this point is important. Prabhupada says here, anyone in the material world is certainly possessed of impure propensity, right? It's a nature of the material world, right? Samsara dharma abhimuhya mana. There is a verse in Bhagavatam that once who understands the dharma of samsara is that it is full of material propensities. It's a material world after all. So the impure propensities will always be there. That is the first acknowledgement that we all should have. We acknowledge that this is the problem in the material world. And then once you acknowledge the problem, then the solution will come. We think that there is no problem, then naturally no solution will come, right? But today, I think devotees are very quiet, huh? Not asking or any
Hare
sharing.
Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Prabhuji, we've heard of certain sannyasis who have taken up sannyas, but at certain point they go back into grahastha life, maybe for some kind of duty that they need to perform towards their old parents or so in this case, how would it be? But they still follow the Krishna. How would that be considered as a fall down, or would that be considered as not having faith in Krishna, that he will certainly look after my old parents? He is the
No.
caretaker.
Actually, there are two things, Mataji. See, looking after old parents doesn't mean that you're going back to Grihastha ashram, actually. That's a misunderstanding. So somebody is having old parents, he has to take care. He's going and caring doesn't mean that he has given up sannyas. He's still a sannyasi, but he's still carrying out some responsibility. If nobody is there for the old parents, then naturally somebody has to help, right? And then this person is just doing the duty. See, sannyas doesn't mean that you completely cut off all your connections. The only thing that you have to follow is that you don't live with your wife and children, because that is like a grihastha ashrama, right? And grihastha ashrama, the name grihastha means that there is a lot of attachment. There is always things that are binding. But taking care of old parents is not attachment. It is a duty that you have to do. And sometimes sannyasis, there are many sannyasis, even in our movement also, they still go and take care. Like Radhanath Maharaj, I know that he goes and sees his parents, every mother or father. I think father has passed away, but he spends time with his mother. And I think she also left recently. There are many sannyasis like Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj also. He used to go and visit his parents, mother, whoever is alive, who is there now. So they never shy away from this, right? Sometimes the children come to see the father after they become sannyas. So it doesn't mean that, oh, I won't see my children from the previous ashram. No, you just be in a detached platform. You deal with them as you would deal with anybody else, right? Why would you want to badly discriminate against somebody because they were children in a previous ashram? So I don't want to have any connection with them. No. So everybody is welcome. Sannyasi means is equal to everyone. So why to exclude your own children from the previous ashram? So parents, taking care of parents and sometimes interacting with children. But one condition that Mahaprabhu had with that you don't see the wife and you don't mix with the wife. That is one restriction is there for sannyasis, right? So that you don't even see the wife from the previous ashrama. So the wife is still there, then you don't generally mix, at least in a one-to-one basis, right? You may see them in the crowd and that's fine. But there is no one-to-one connection with the wife from the previous ashrama. But seeing children, once in a while, they come and talk, that is fine. That is not called attachment. That doesn't mean that you have gone back to the ashram. You are still in the sannyasi ashram, but you are still carrying out the responsibilities to some extent because you have some responsibilities like old parents that have to be taken care of. That is fine, Mati. That is nothing wrong with that. That is also part of one's social responsibility, right? But the main purpose of a sannyasi is that he has given up those connections for the purpose of serving Krishna. So as long as that mission is not spoilt or there is an impediment in that mission, then whatever these side things they may do, that is not considered a fall down. Whereas somebody who gives up sannyas and goes back to householder life, that is certainly a fall down. So there's a distinction here. Is that okay, Mataji?
Yeah, understood. Thank you so much.
Yeah. It's a good point you raised here. Okay. So nothing, we can look at the next verse, which is a very, very important verse. And I believe this should be in your verse for memorization or memorizing also, I believe. Ramiti Mataji, would you want to chant the verse?
Okay, Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
यज्ञार्थात् कर्मणोऽन्यत्र लोकोऽयं कर्मबन्धनः तदर्थं कर्म कौन्तेय मुक्तसङ्गसमाचर. Prabhuji, translation directly?
Yes,
or
yes. Yeah, translation.
Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way, you will always remain free from bondage. Purport: since one has to work even for the simple maintenance of the body, the prescribed duties for a particular social position and quality are so made that the purpose can be fulfilled. Yajna means Lord Vishnu, or sacrificial performances. All sacrificial performances also are meant for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu. The Vedas enjoin Yagyo Vai Vishnu. In other words, the same purpose is served whenever one performs prescribed yagyas or directly serves Lord Vishnu. Krishna consciousness is therefore performance of yagya as it is prescribed in this verse. The Varnashram institution also aims at satisfying Lord Vishnu. Varnashrama charavata purushena parapuman Vishnu aradyate. Vishnu Puran 8.8. Therefore, one has to work for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Any other work done in this material world will be a cause of bondage. For both good and evil work have their reactions, and any reaction binds the performer. Therefore, one has to work in Krishna consciousness to satisfy Krishna or Vishnu. And while performing such activities, one is in a liberated stage. This is the great art of doing work, and in the beginning, this process requires very expert guidance. One should therefore act very diligently under the expert guidance of a devotee of Lord Krishna, or under the direct instruction of Lord Krishna himself, under whom Arjuna had the opportunity to work. Nothing should be performed for sense gratification, but everything should be done for the satisfaction of Krishna. This practice will not only save one from the reaction of work, but also gradually elevate one to transcendental loving service of the Lord, which alone can raise one to the kingdom of God. Hare Krishna.
Right. Thank you, Mataji. So this verse is extremely important, right? So Krishna is now coming to a conclusion of this section of Bhakti Yoga. And this is where Krishna talks about the topmost platform of Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga means doing service for Krishna. And directly Krishna tells here, Yajnarthat karmano anyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha. Anyatra means anything else apart from Yajnarthat, which means any karma that is not meant to satisfy Yajna. Yajna means Vishnu. Another name of Vishnu is Yajna. Right? So Yajna Arthat means for Vishnu or for Krishna, whatever karma you do, anything else that you do which is not linked to Yajna or Vishnu, that leads to karma bandhanaha. That means that anything that you do apart from Yajna Artha is actually bondage, karma bandhana. And bondage means what? You again take birth, again die, again take birth and die. And therefore, tadartham karma kaunte. Therefore, you do your work to satisfy Arjuna, that you do your work to satisfy Krishna or Vishnu. And that is how you become Mukta Sangha Samachara. So the beauty about this verse is not only does it help you to purify your work and consciousness, whatever you're doing, whatever your social occupation is, that gets purified. Secondly, you become liberated from this material association altogether. So there is benefits on both sides. There's nothing to lose. It's a win-win situation. That means you purify your current work, and then after purification, you go back to Krishna. So that is the ultimate platform that Krishna wants to bring everybody to this platform. So this verse is extremely important. This becomes like a thread that ties all the other verses that are to follow in this chapter and the subsequent chapters, right? Always remember this pivotal verse, which kind of tells us very, very directly. Krishna is telling here, Yajnarthat karmano anyatra. Now that means any karma that is not connected to me is binding. And that binding, which means that you are not free from material association. Therefore, Krishna is directly telling Arjuna that, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, or rather my satisfaction, Krishna's satisfaction. Right? Then that is the only way to become free from bondage. So there are two sections here. Prabhupada is in the purport given very nicely. The first section, Prabhupada explains the meaning of yajna, right? That we just read or heard. So yajna means Vishnu, and yajna, the other meaning is sacrifice. So which means any sacrifice that you do ultimately is to be done for the sake of pleasing Krishna. In the 5th chapter later, Krishna will say that, that ultimately he is the enjoyer of all the sacrifices, right? The conclusion of 5th chapter. So 5th chapter is connected to 3rd chapter anyway, that we will see later. But the conclusion of 5th chapter is that ultimately he is the enjoyer of all sacrifices, which means all sacrifices are meant for his satisfaction. Yajno vai Vishnuhu. And then Prabhupada explains the purpose of Varnashrama system. That is, the purpose of Varnashrama is Purusha Parapuma. That means ultimately to please Krishna by worshipping Krishna. Vishnu Aradhyate or Krishna Aradhyate. So that is what Prabhupada explains in the first purport. And very importantly, the second purport, Prabhupada writes that how do we do this? How do we do this pleasing of Krishna? Arjuna was lucky to have Krishna's presence directly, and Krishna told him and he did it. But we don't have that fortune of direct physical association or presence of Krishna. So how do we do it? Prabhupada explains it through the medium of spiritual master. Because spiritual master is a transparent medium who's connected to Krishna, and he is the one who connects us to Krishna because he is connected to Krishna, right? So anything that we do must be done under the expert guidance of a spiritual master who is a pure devotee. Right? All of us are fortunate to be under Srila Prabhupada's shelter, and he has given us everything. But we still need a physical spiritual master to guide us because of our fallen condition, and constantly we are battling with the material energy, and then we are not fixed in our because we have so many other duties and responsibilities that we are 24 hours we're not able to remember Krishna, right? So that's why we need a physical representative of Krishna in the form of our the Vartma Pradakshak Gurus who are there in the current society, who are actually representatives of Srila Prabhupada, right? They're all connected to Prabhupada. So by their mercy and by their medium, they connect us to the path given by Prabhupada, right? So for us, even we don't have direct connection to Prabhupada in one sense, right? Because Prabhupada is not here. Of course, his books and Vani, everything is there, so we are connected. But then we always need help. We always need guidance because each of us have our own situation. And the spiritual master is expert because he understands exactly the tendencies of his disciple or the tendencies of all our persons. So he will guide us accordingly, according to our situation, according to our sthane sthita. He will engage us in the right path that connects us to Prabhupada and eventually to Krishna, right? That's why it's extremely important to take shelter of a bona fide devotee of Krishna, who is our spiritual master, right? Those who don't have a direct spiritual master, then of course Prabhupada is there. But eventually we need a person to guide us because our condition is extremely, it's fragile, right? It's very, very fragile condition. So we need expert guidance from a spiritual master who can guide us on the path. So we should take a shelter of such devotees who can take us, who are connected to Prabhupada themselves, and they can tell us exactly how Prabhupada's instructions have to be followed on day-to-day life. And then eventually by that process, we will eventually be connected to Krishna and then perfect our current life and then go back to him in the next life or maybe the next couple of lives, let's say. Okay, so that is the explanation of this purport in a very, very summarized way. Right. So this verse is extremely important. Now, after this, Krishna will start another section in this chapter where he will talk about that yoga ladder in a little more detail. Right. So far, he is given in a very, very summarized form. Right. Explicitly, he has not called out karma kanda, is not called out the sakama karma yoga, nishkama karma, and bhakti yoga. Is presented in a very, very summarized form for our understanding. But then he will develop this further in the next verse onwards, where he will start from the karma kanda platform. He'll say that okay, there are people who do this for the purpose of promotion to higher planets or to enjoy the current life. They do different yagyas to please this demigod or that demigod. Then there is always a cooperation between the demigods and the living entities because Krishna has created the whole system that they can work together. And eventually, the purpose is what you cooperate with everybody, and then eventually you understand the importance of that is an ultimate controller Krishna, and we should please him. So then you don't worship the demigods for any petty interests or just to satisfy material demands. Then you start coming to the platform of, the Nishkama Karma Yoga or eventually to Bhakti Yoga, right? So that journey he will take us through in a little more detail from next verse onwards. So here is presenting the topmost yoga, which is connecting ourselves directly to Krishna by way of our activities. So our activities must be dedicated to Krishna. So dedicated means whatever, it could mean various things, right? Either you're directly working for Krishna, that means those who are full-time devotees who are doing different services in the temple. So they are directly engaging their activities and senses. But for us, most of us who are not directly in that atmosphere, then through our work, we purify ourselves. Through our work, the sthane sthita again, right? Sthane sthita shrutigatam. In whatever circumstances we are in, we add Krishna to our life. And that's how we become yajnartharth karmana, which means our karma is also connected to Krishna. So externally, it may seem that it is not connected, but because we are doing it in the right consciousness, we are always remembering Krishna. I remember Narsingha Maharaj, who's fortunately he's here with us now. One devotee had asked a question to Maharaj that Maharaj, we chant 16 rounds, but then throughout the day, like 7, 8, 10 hours, we are outside, we are completely in material energy, we are forgetting Krishna. So how do we protect ourselves? So Maharaj gave a very nice answer that the 16 rounds that you chant right in the morning, and we discussed briefly in the last session that the timing of your chanting is very important. So Maharaj himself is a perfect example that he gets up so early in the morning, he chants all his 16 rounds. Right? So we may not be able to do that, but at least we should try to chant as many rounds as possible in the morning hours. So the 5 to 7, Prabhupada says that 5 to 7 chanting, the quality of that is equivalent to like 6 hours of chanting. Prabhupada writes somewhere in some conversation that the 2 hours, 5 to 7 before the sunrise and before all our material energies fully manifest, right? The sattva guna becomes rajo guna and tamo guna during the day. That time, if you chant, for example, I'm sure we have all experienced that chanting in the morning, the quality of that is much better than chanting during the day when so many thoughts are coming in and going out, and then we are doing other things amidst our chanting. So that is not good. So Maharaj said that if you chant this 2 hours in the morning, you dedicate to Krishna chanting, then the whole day your consciousness is protected. It is not just 2 hours I chant, so 2 hours there is protection. No, as I said earlier, Krishna gives us much more than we deserve. So the 2 hours of chanting protects us throughout the day. And when we finish our work, we come back and really thank Krishna that thank you, Krishna, for protecting my consciousness, that I somehow or the other during the day, some situations came and I remembered you. Or I spoke to some devotee, we discussed about some verse, somebody called me, or I spoke to my wife or I spoke to my children, and we discussed about something that they had experienced. That gave me a chance to remember Krishna. That is how Krishna protects our consciousness. It doesn't let us go anywhere. He always ties us through that unseen, invisible thread. Always, he ties us to him. But that tying is on the platform of our surrender to our spiritual master and how we follow the instructions of spiritual master. Right? So, spiritual master tells us to follow this. We try to the best of our abilities. So, one of the verses later in the 3rd chapter, Krishna will say that we should not resent or we should not be rebellious to any instructions. We may not be able to follow it perfectly, that is fine. But as long as we are not rebellious or we are not resentful to that instruction, that is the first step. We should favorably accept it. We may not be able to execute it. Like Prabhupada has given instruction 1922 that you go and preach. But Prabhupada executed that when in 1933 when he took initiation. So 11 hours 11 years Prabhupada took to actually execute it. But although not exactly execute, he was always meditating. So in that sense, he was already preparing himself. But the actual execution happened in 1933, 11 years later. And then by the time Prabhupada took sannyas, it was 1955. So 33 years had passed already since meeting his spiritual master for the first time to actually carry out his instruction of going to preach, going to West and preach. So it doesn't matter how much time we have taken in that sense, but our consciousness, how we are meditating on the instruction of spiritual master and how we are trying to sincerely carry out that instruction is what is important. And we should not be resentful. We should not be saying that, oh, no, this instruction doesn't apply to me. He doesn't know my situation, that situation. A spiritual master knows everything perfectly. He is not from this material world. He has the vision of Krishna's vision, right? Krishna gives him the vision to see exactly the truth from reality, distinguish truth from reality. So based on that platform, he's not on our platform, right? Our platform is duality, platform of duality. We always judge good and bad, black and white. But the spiritual master is on a transcendental platform. He knows the reality, he can see the reality, and accordingly, he gives us the instruction and guidance that you follow this. So we simply have to follow without resentment, without any objections, any violent objections. We agree to follow, but we may not be able to exactly execute it immediately. But at least we are trying our best. Okay, Maharaj has given this instruction. Let me try and adjust my situation, my life in such a way that I can start to follow the instructions. That is the mood that Krishna looks for. He is bhavagrahi janardana. He looks at the bhava, what bhava we are exhibiting in our character, whether we are conducive or favorable to that instruction or not, or we are resentful, we are trying to rebel against instruction. I'll do what I feel like, because a spiritual master does not know my situation. I will do accordingly. I mean, according to my situation, my plan, I will do it. No, that's not going to work. We have to align ourselves to Krishna's instruction through the medium of spiritual masters. That is the important message of this particular verse. One is to devote everything to Krishna, but under the expert guidance of a spiritual master. Because he will tell you exactly how to carry out the activities and connect to Krishna. We don't have that understanding because we simply think how to connect ourselves to Krishna. I'm doing this. We always try to, look at from the platform of duality, right? That Krishna's instructions is here and my life is here. I cannot connect. I see it as two distinct things. But the spiritual master helps us to connect the two together. And that's why we have to sincerely try and follow. Prabhupada always said, just try to follow. You may not be able to execute it perfectly, but just try and follow, right? So that is I'll conclude that with here, maybe 10 minutes. Are there any points to discuss or any Any questions we can take, because next verse is a different section, so rather start from there or the next week. I mean the next session.
Prabhuji, what are sacrificial performances that are mentioned in the purport?
Okay, so the sacrificial performances here basically means that you are trying to satisfy Krishna. That's all, nothing else. So anything, because ultimately even we have to satisfy Krishna, right? We have to give up something. We have to sacrifice something, either time, some energy, or money, or instead of going here, I go there, right? Instead of going to the temple, instead of going here, I go to the temple. That is also sacrificing your proclivities or tendencies, right? I want to go let's say, I want to go for a trip to Bali or Australia or somewhere. But I say that, okay, instead of going there, why don't we go for a Dham Yatra? Why don't we go to Vrindavan, we go to Mayapur and spend the time there? That's one way of looking at it, right? That is also sacrifice, because you're sacrificing your enjoyment tendency to at least come close to Krishna, go to the Dham, take association of devotees, honor prasadam, and spend time there and develop the taste for bhakti, right? When you go to Dham, then naturally you develop the faith and taste. So that is so sacrifice. Don't look at it in terms of performing some yajna, right? Where you're organizing elaborate yajna. No, not that sacrifice. Ultimately, you may perform that, but if you don't remember Krishna and then offer to him, then that sacrificial performance also is of no use, right? It becomes disconnected from Krishna. So anything that you do, any sacrifice you perform, any which way, but ultimately, if it is meant to go towards Krishna, that is considered a sacrificial performance.
Okay, bro.
Is it okay, bro?
Okay, bro.
Yeah. Anything else? Anyone else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
Just a clarification. So, in general, the understanding is good work doesn't have reactions or it doesn't bind. But here in the paragraph, Prabhupada clarifies that both good and evil work have their reactions if it is not performed to satisfy Vishnu or Krishna.
Absolutely. You hit the right point, Prabhu. So many times we have the understanding that if you do pious work, then we are not getting any reactions. But pious work will get pious reactions. That means you have to take birth in a higher planet. Maybe you may be promoted to, let's say, moon planet or sun planet or heavenly planets, because you have done some pious work. So to either in this life you'll get some opulence to enjoy as a result of pious, or in the next life you'll go to some higher planet. But the point is that you're still bound, right? You're still bound to the process of birth and death. You're not escaping the process of birth and death. So both good and evil work naturally we know we suffer. But the important thing is good work also has reactions and it's binding. So the good or bad, if it is, of course, bad is disconnected from Krishna, there is no doubt. But if good work is not connected to Krishna, then that is as good as evil work. Though you may not suffer the like hellish reaction, but you still have to enjoy the results by taking birth again. You still have to take birth to enjoy the results of that good pious work. So in that sense, it is still bondage. And as Prabhupada and Krishna explains later in the 9th chapter, that once you exhaust your pious credits, you have to come down again and renew the karma again. It's not that it is permanent. It's not a devotional service that becomes a permanent credit, right? We saw in the last chapter, right, verse number 240 of Bhagavad Gita. Nehapi kramanashrosti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpam apyasa dharmasya trayato mahato bhayat. So even if you perform little devotional service, that is your permanent credit, right? You can start from that point in the next life. You're not able to finish it. But material work, pious work is not like that. It expires. After the credits are expired, then you again come back and renew the karma. Then again you perform good work, again you attain some pious credits, again go here and there. But the whole process of coming down and going up, coming down and going up is continuing. It's still bondage. There is no liberation from that bondage, right? So ultimately, if the work is not connected to Krishna, it's still binding.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing it up, Prabhu. Anything else?
Prabhuji,
Hare
one
Krishna,
more.
Prabhu.
Yeah.
Prabhu,
Yeah, Prabhu.
one question regarding 3.8.
So
Yes.
when we are discussing about 3.8, you mentioned somebody is in Gragasatta. He cannot give up and then go to take a sannyasa and go. But when we see the Mahaprabhu's life, when at a young age
Yes.
he gave up his Gragastha ashram with a young wife, then took sannyas. Generally, we know as a devotee his mission,
Yes.
but when outsider is asking how to convince them that what purpose he was doing, if you
Okay.
can.
Yeah, that's a good question, bro. So, yeah, one is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Supreme Lord himself, so we cannot imitate his actions, right? And naturally, he came to fulfill a particular mission. And his mission was what? To spread the Sankirtan Yajna and to spread the holy chanting of the holy names. And he was on an emergency mission. And of course, the Lord himself, Supreme Lord himself came and he wanted to set an example that you have to give up certain things for a higher cause. Uh, we cannot follow or imitate the example because we are not in his position of transcendence, right? We are still in a material position, we are attached. So for us, we are not in a purified state. Mahaprabhu, whether he is married or is not married, he is always in a transcendental position, right? He is just a social formality that is displaying as a part of his pastimes to get married to somebody. But those marriages also are not like ordinary marriages. They are all Lakshmis, like eternal consorts of the Lord. So whether they marry here or they don't marry, they are anyway eternally married there in the spiritual world. It is just for the purpose of showing to us not to imitate, but to follow the idea or follow the principle that if a situation comes that we have to give up something for a higher cause, we must be ready. We must be ready for that. But that is exactly what Prabhupada did, right? He knew exactly when the situation was right for him and then he gave up. He did not artificially give up. So the example of Mahaprabhu, we cannot apply to our life because, as I said again, his position is not material, right? So our position is material. When we are married or whether we are not married, our position is material. So we are not in that purified state of consciousness. So for us, we have to go through that purification by staying in the ashram and following the course of that ashram. And then when a suitable time comes, as per the examples of other devotees, that's why we should always take examples of acharyas for our acharya means one who performs his action by his action he shows. Of course, Mahaprabhu is also considered an acharya, but then certain things Mahaprabhu did, we cannot, I mean, none of his actions we can actually imitate, right? Because he's Supreme Lord himself. Although he appeared as a devotee, but he's always Supreme Lord. So his position is different, Prabhu. He is a transcendental position. So whether he's married or not married, whether he gives up, nothing affects him. He's always in that transcendental position. So it doesn't matter. But he still gave an example that if we have a higher purpose in life, higher mission, then we must be ready to sacrifice that. Now, when do we sacrifice is up to us based on our situation. But the spirit of sacrifice or renunciation must be always there in our heart. In fact, my Guru Maharaj would always say that even if you are a grahastha, that spirit of renunciation must be there in your heart always. You may not
Yeah,
execute it immediately, but the spirit must always be there.
yeah, Prabhu. In Mahaprabhu's
Mm.
life story himself, why he took sannyasi is because at those time they take somebody's instruction very seriously only when they are sannyasi.
Yes,
That is the
correct.
reason he took.
Yes. Until then, people were taking very lightly, right? Yeah,
He
that's a good
mainly
point.
took sannyas for that purpose, so that
Yes,
others
yes,
can take up his message.
correct.
He sacrificed.
So, yeah, so we should follow his instruction in the sense of the spirit detachment must be there, but how we execute it is dependent on each of our ashramas, each of our responsibilities. Yeah. In
Thank
fact, sannyasa is actually there is a verse in scriptures which says sannyasa is one of the 5 things that are actually banned in Kali Yuga. It's exactly because of this, because people, Mahaprabhu himself said this that sannyasa is actually not allowed in Kali Yuga. But that is, of course, it's for a class of devotees who are extremely in that position, a matured state. For them, it doesn't matter whether they are in this position or that position. They can of course take sannyas. But largely speaking, sannyasa is not really recommended in Kali Yuga because Krishna knows that in the Kali Yuga atmosphere that we tend to artificially, without the right maturity or consciousness, we try to give up, right? That's why it was never recommended. But of course, in his case, as you also mentioned, right? He had a mission to fulfill. He had a higher purpose to fulfill. And then sannyasis are always respected in the ashram. So naturally, he had to take the step.
Yeah, bro. Correct. Thank you, bro.
Thank you, Prabhu. I think somebody else was asking also.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
In this 3.9 only, there's one thing that they say, liberated stage. Therefore, one has to work in Krishna consciousness to satisfy Krishna or Vishnu, and while performing such activities, one is in a liberated stage. Liberated, like supposing we are doing activities other than Krishna consciousness, of course, like we have to do our daily activities, it's not Krishna. So that means like only when we do Krishna consciousness, only that time, what is that liberated stage that they're talking about? Is it like...
Okay, liberated stage here means that one is going towards his constitutional position, which means one is realizing his constitutional position, which means what is a constitutional position? We are eternally servants of Krishna. So slowly one is coming out of the material consciousness, that he's coming to understand by practice of Krishna consciousness that all these material relations are temporary. They are going to go away one day. But at the same time, I carry out my duties in a spirit of detachment. As a matter of duty, I still carry out my duties, but I don't develop unnecessary attachment, because I know that by developing attachment to something that is material, my consciousness is going to become worse, because that object or that person is not going to be with me forever, right? So naturally, if I'm too attached to that person leaves, then naturally I become detached, and not detached. I become completely in a lamentable situation, right? I'm not able to come out of the lamentation. That's why too much of attachment leads to lamentation, because that object definitely we're going to lose in the material world. Nothing is permanent here. No relationships are permanent. Our bodies are not permanent. Nobody is permanent. No bodies are permanent here, right? So naturally, if we develop too much of attachment, that the emphasis is on too much attachment. Excessive attachment always leads to lamentation, and then the fall down will happen, right? As explained in Bhagavad Gita, the second chapter, the verse 62, 63 explains the process of fall down. That you have developed too much attachment, then you develop, such excessive attachment towards it that when you lose it, you become angry. By anger, you become illusion. By illusion, you lose intelligence, and then you come back into the material cycle of birth and death again. So it is the attachments that actually keep us bound in this material world. So this sentence means, a nice observation you have, Mataji, that this sentence, it means actually that when we are performing such activities in the right consciousness, which is Krishna consciousness, we start to see that this material relationships are temporary. So I should not develop excessive attachment. But at the same time, I have to carry out my duties in a spirit of detachment. When you do that, balance both sides, that develop attachment for Krishna, develop detachment from material relationships, but at the same time, I'm not artificially changing my position, not giving up the position. I'm still carrying out, but with the right consciousness, you're already in a liberated stage. Liberated stage means because I don't have attachment and then I'm attached to Krishna, for sure, Krishna will liberate me from this life and I'll go back to the spiritual world in the next life. But in this life, while I'm living, I am realizing my constitutional position that my eternal relationship is with Krishna, and this relationship is all temporary.
Okay.
So that is what is the meaning, Mataji.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I think we have just hit the dot. So if you're okay, we can conclude today's session, and then we'll continue Krishna willing on Saturday from the 10th verse. So thank you everyone for patiently hearing and asking and sharing your realizations. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Dandavat
Hare
pranam.
Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.